My talk today is about AI and AppSec and why we need to prioritize security. So the challenge we have right now in the industry is that AI is used as a buzzword, right? So a lot of us, we just want to throw AI at everything, and we don't really, some of us don't understand what AI is, how it can help us, and times when we don't really need to use AI for the solution. So in this talk, I'm going to go over AI and AppSec, how it's being used, and why sometimes we have some people that make it sound very trivial, and then some people make it sound very confusing, and how we actually need to communicate AI in AppSec in this field so that we can use AI effectively. So just another introduction of myself. Oscar already mentioned this, but I specialize in AI and machine learning security. I'm an international speaker, so I regularly give talks about AI and cybersecurity. Probably the best way to contact me is my LinkedIn. After the talk, I'll give you my email as well in case you're not on LinkedIn. But this is what I do every day is talk about AI security kind of from both aspects, right? Using AI for security, like in AppSec, or attacking AI itself. So now let's get started with the talk, right? So how is AI used in AppSec? Some of the previous talks touched on this, but AI can be used for software composition analysis, and it can also be used for SaaS tools, so static application security testing. Basically, how AI works is it's a very powerful tool for data analytics, and it looks at certain patterns that you see. And from those patterns, it can get you some insights about what's in the code. So that's actually how it's being used in AppSec, is it's looking at these patterns, and from that it can tell you, like, okay, this is an example of secure code, or this might be a problem, or this might be a bug, right? So that's how it's really working. So now, first, I'm going to talk about software composition analysis. So traditionally, without AI, it was very manual, right? So manually looking at the code. When I was working as a software engineer, we would have test cases, but it was looking at manually the code. It wasn't really using AI. So for AI, you might have heard we're using now tools to help us with coding, like GitHub Copilot, for example. So this SCA idea is also like that. So it's using AI to help us analyze the code itself. So we're using AI and machine learning to see these patterns within the code. And then from those patterns, we can say like, okay, this indicates that there's a bug here, or this indicates there might be a compliance issue. So for example, when you code with GitHub Copilot and it gives you suggestions as you're typing in your code, same idea here. When you have code, it basically gives you a suggestion like this doesn't seem right, consider something else. So this is also used for advanced software composition scanning and real-time vulnerability alerts. So basically the main idea behind this is that AI is being used not only to analyze the code much faster than we could do manually, but you can also use it to give you alerts based on vulnerabilities that it sees. So it's really just AI is looking at all these different patterns, and then from that, it knows what to alert you on. And then the second way AI is being used in AppSec right now is for SAST. So again, AI is being used to see these patterns. So this is some text I got from a marketing blog that they were trying to market, like why AI is so amazing, and it's going to transform SaaS tools. So first they say AI can be used to find business and code logic flaws. And yes, that's correct. And it's because it can look at patterns. So it's not a reasoning machine, but it's able to see like, okay, this pattern exists. And from that pattern, I know that AI could tell me like this is a bug, right? Then the second thing they say is something they call next gen detection with LLMs. Combine large language models with static analysis, leading to more understanding of code and increased accuracy. So again, next gen detection, that's for marketing. Large language models are used in natural language processing, and those are just to see patterns within text and patterns within the words. So what it's doing is it's looking at the code. It looks at, if you say include these packages, or you have this if statement, it's able to see like, okay, you have an if statement, and then after the if statement, whatever you have, that's going to be used in the if statement, and then the else statement is the next case, right? So it's able to see these words, which gives it the patterns that it's looking for. So that's how it's able to understand how the code is working, and that's how it's able to give you increased accuracy, is it's just able to analyze the code in an automated manner. So instead of manually looking at it, it can tell you right away, like, okay, if statement, do you have a closing parentheses? Oh, you're missing your ending parentheses, right? So that's an example. They also say that it has a strong reasoning ability, determine whether a pattern is a false positive or a real vulnerability. So AI doesn't actually reason anything, and I've found that that is actually a strong misconception that's going around in the industry. So AI is really just a tool for data analysis and data analytics. It's looking at the data itself and it sees these patterns, right? The key thing is the pattern. And from those patterns, it can tell you like, okay, this is a real vulnerability or this is a false positive. But again, it's just data analysis. It's not actually reasoning anything. Many studies have shown that AI cannot provide you any reasoning ability. It's, just a machine. It's looking at these patterns, and from the patterns it can match, it can give you some insight. So for example, when you type something into ChatGPT or Copilot, whatever LLM you choose, and you ask it a question, it gives you a response because it looks up like, okay, I see all this data and I can see like, yes, this makes sense. So if you ask it like, give me a recipe for lasagna, it's not that it knows like what you're saying, right? It just looks up like recipe and lasagna, and then it can give you the relevant data based on those keywords. So it's really AI and LLMs, they're all data analytics. There's no reasoning behind that, right? It's just a simple look up all this data and see the patterns there. And then the final statement is that they said AI has provided you contextual awareness with no user input. So again, this I think is a lot of marketing that they're trying to do here. But basically what this statement means is that AI is trained on a lot of data. So to actually get AI to work, you need to train it on lots and lots and lots of data. So in order to see like these might be vulnerabilities or this might be benign, it needs to be able to be able to be trained on lots and lots of code examples. And then from that coding, from the code it's been trained on, it can then recognize vulnerabilities and tell you like, okay, this is an example of a buffer overflow, or this is an example of an SQL injection, right? So it can recognize these vulnerabilities because it's seen them before or it's seen something like it before. And that's what it means by contextual awareness. And then you understand how the components work, but it's because it's again learning from the patterns based on data you give it. So if you instantiate a class, it's able to recognize like, okay, this is a class, but it's not reasoning anything, right? It's just learning like, okay, these patterns are what I should expect, and from these patterns, I know this is what code looks like in Python or C++, and I know like, okay, this is an example of a class, or this is an example of an if statement, and from that, it's able to understand how components work. So it's really just looking at patterns. So I think AI is something we can apply throughout security in all these different domains, including AppSec, because you can really use AI anywhere there is data, as long as you have a lot of data and you're trying to see patterns. So in some ways, AI is a useful tool, but it's not, a magic solution. It's just in this case, it's really good because if you need a solution that gives you insight based on all this data, and you don't want to analyze manually, then yeah, you can use AI. So here are some examples of AI-driven AppSec tools. Again, I'm not endorsing anything in this presentation. I'm just sharing these as examples just so you get an idea. So here's one tool called Sync, powered by DeepCode AI. So it's analyzing the code itself. Like I mentioned, a software composition analysis. Checkmarks has an AI security tool as well. They say they use AI to empower developers and AppSec teams to make application security easier. And then there's GitHub Advanced Security. They also have an AI-powered application security testing. And they also have Aptori, which is AI-powered autonomous testing. These are just 4 tool examples. There are others out there. I just put these on there because these were some of the examples I found. And basically, all these different tools, they're trying to do the same thing. That is analyze the patterns within the code and analyze it and tell you like, okay, this indicates a bug or this indicates something is not right. But all of these different tools might give you different results because they've all been trained on different data sets. So they might behave differently. So for example, in cybersecurity, when we have tools for malware analysis and these vendors come up to you and say, they can secure your systems with a 99% accuracy or something like that, it's because maybe they've trained their algorithms like, okay, I've trained my algorithm on recognizing all these phishing emails. So if I train it on a specific data set, then based on what I train it on, that's how the AI will give me the responses. And the same thing with all these tools is they might all be using different data sets to train their tools. So some tools might give you different results compared to the other one. Some of them might have different user support or user interfaces, but at the end of the day, they're all trying to do the same thing. Fundamentally, they're all just trying to look at the patterns to tell you whether something is right or wrong with your code and to help you with testing. So instead of manually doing it, you can have an AI assistant. So that's kind of how AI is being used in AppSec, right? So there's a lot of different tools coming out in the market, not only in AppSec, but I would say just in general in all industries. So a lot of people are hyping up AI right now. And so now I'm going to talk about what people think about AI and how we should change the perception of AI. So first thing is a lot of people tend to hype up AI and they say AI is amazing, it's magical, there's a lot of excitement. We see lots and lots of new startups and research coming out about AI. And this meme illustrates it, right? So AI, according to the news, like it's a Terminator Skynet, and then AI in real life, it's a butterfly, and then the AI is asking, is this a pigeon, right? So AI is only as good as the data you give it. So if you don't train it on enough data, it won't give you good results. So if you only train it on, I don't know, five files, it's not going to give you good results, and it might think, oh, is this vulnerability something else entirely, right? So like the bottom one here, if it's not being trained on what a butterfly is and it's only being trained on pigeons, then it might just think everything is a pigeon, right? So that's the thing with AI is it's only as good as the data you give it. And I think in the media, there's a lot of misconception about what AI can do because we have this image in our head of Skynet that AI will control the world and take over everything. But right now, AI is still very narrow. AI can only do one good task at a time. It doesn't have this general intelligence. And remember, AI cannot reason. So really, when you think about AI, think about it like this, like it's analyzing data, and if you give it enough data, it can give you good insights. But sometimes it makes mistakes. So that's why I wouldn't rely on AI completely. Whenever you're using AI, it's always an AI assistant. Like, for example, you ask Siri something, and sometimes Siri gives you the right answer, and sometimes Siri just gives you a completely incorrect answer. So the same thing with any AI is it's only used as a suggestion, as an assistant, but you need to also think about the limitations and risks with AI, right? AI won't be able to solve everything, and it's also sometimes has some security vulnerabilities. So here's some issues with AI, right? So AI is vulnerable to many different security risks, and ultimately AI can make mistakes, right? Like, is this butterfly a pigeon, right? So here is a very useful resource from OWASP, OWASP Top 10 for LLMs. I've put it here. That's one example listing the security risks for AI or large language models. And these are also applicable to AI in general as well. I've put the link here on the slide so you can look at it later. But basically, this is just touching on some of the security risk we have with AI. So for example, supply chain vulnerabilities, right? Where is your supply chain? How are you getting the data? How are you gathering it? How is the model trained? Training data poisoning is like you have a data point and it's actually something else. So you might label a butterfly as a pigeon, and then the AI would say all butterflies are pigeons, right? So that's an example of data poisoning. Um, and excessive agency is when the LLM is undertaking actions leading to unintended consequences. So a lot of people are also over relying on AI. So that's another risk is like, I'm not going to code manually anymore. I just want to use whatever Copilot tells me, or I'm going to ask ChatGPT to write my Python script for me. And that's not a good idea because AI can hallucinate and it can make things up. For example, if you were to ask ChatGPT, like write a Python script for me, it might give you code that could partially run, but it's also going to say like import package XYZ that doesn't exist. Or it might tell you to do something which doesn't actually exist. And so I think as we're starting to use AI in the industry now, we are encountering this over reliance issue as well as people just want to use AI to do all the work and they don't really want to quality check like does it make sense? And then the other issue we have with AI is that on one hand, some people say like it's amazing and it can't do anything wrong. But then the other issue is ultimately it's really hard for people to understand what AI actually is. Because when we talk about AI in the industry and AI in research typically involves a lot of mathematical computations and a lot of statistics. So with research, we generally talk about statistics, we talk about mathematical computations, and this is just one screenshot from a paper to give you an idea. And for regular people that aren't in research or aren't AI experts, and they want to understand AI, like this is very difficult for them to understand because it's using all this technical terminology and this jargon that's very difficult for people to understand, right? So we're also having that issue is it's really hard to understand AI very well. And then even when you understand it, how do you communicate it to someone who isn't a researcher, who doesn't know, what these formulas mean? So I think ultimately, in the future, we should use AI in AppSec, but AI should not get rid of AppSec. So think of AI as a useful assistant like Siri, but it's not something that should replace your own analytical reasoning or your own critical thinking. So I think in the future, we need to make AI understandable for everyone, but we also need to make sure that we don't just completely rely on AI. And here are two key takeaways I have is before you actually use AI in your solutions, whether you're at work or you're using it for a side project, make sure you ask whether AI is in fact the right solution for this problem. Because a lot of times people just want to throw AI at everything without stopping to think like, does it make sense to use AI? If it's more expensive to use AI versus a traditional solution and you won't get any benefit out of it, then you shouldn't be using AI. And AI is only as good as the data you give it. So if you don't have enough data, and you don't have enough data to do this pattern matching, then maybe AI is not the right solution. But if you do have a lot of data, like millions of records, and you want to analyze patterns within the data, then yes, AI might potentially be a good solution for you. And then also make sure you remember that AI can make mistakes, it can hallucinate, it is vulnerable to security issues. So if you are using AI to generate code or with static analysis, make sure you verify the results. Like don't just blindly copy paste what they suggest to you because it could be wrong, it could make mistakes, they could hallucinate some packages that don't exist. So make sure you understand that I'm using AI as an assistant, but it's not going to replace everything for me. So thank you so much for listening to this talk. If you're interested in working together, you can email me here. I specialize in making technology relatable to a wide variety of audiences, and I'm really happy to collaborate with others in the industry. So with that, I'm opening it up for questions. Any questions? Just looking at the chat. Okay, it looks like I don't see any questions from the audience, but okay, thank you so much, Josh, for your comment. So if you have any other questions in the future, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or via my email. So I also do consulting on the side as well. So feel free to reach out to me if you want to collaborate in the future. Thanks so much and have a great afternoon or evening. One question, did you have any experience of trying out any of the AI solutions? So for me personally, I've used the GitHub solution, but I haven't used any of the other ones. So I have started developing my own generative AI tools. And so for that, I'm using GitHub, and I use GitHub Copilot for that. And sometimes it does a really good job with basic code, but I'm still running into an issue where it sometimes hallucinates or it has syntax errors. So for me, I'm still not 100% bought into using it. For me personally, I still like just uh, coding on my own, and then I think AI is useful if you just have like a question, like and it points you in the right direction. But for me, I've noticed a lot of it is just I like coding on my own, and then AI can double check after I'm done, maybe. But yeah, this is an exciting field. I think we're seeing changes happening in AI on a weekly or daily basis. So there are new tools, new solutions that are constantly coming out. Okay, if no other questions, thank you again for your time. Have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you, doctor, and have a beautiful rest of your day.